Oh my guys, there's a Ronda Rousey put out a book, and I would encourage you to get it if that's a plug and like would make me nice to go and help. Then I do want to do that. I must tell you, I had very big things myself that were also for sale, and Ronda never once helped me in any fashion to get the word out. And I consider her a friend of mine. Now I don't say this to begrudge something with Ronda. I say it because if somebody is made by our sport but they leave our sport and they don't come back, it seems to me that would be recognized. Like that would be recognized in some kind of fashion. And Ronda was very unique in our sport. She was the most likely to end up on Ellen DeGeneres' couch. And when I give that example, I think Ellen came off the air, but she was massive at the time. And that would be what we call mainstream for our sport that has also or always been in a niche type situation, particularly back in the 2014s. Like it was a really big deal what Ronda could bring in. Or A-level actors that show up in the arena there to see Ronda. Like it was a big deal. And the reason I say that is that was a table that was not set by Ronda. That table was set by many people before that, and it wasn't quite as bountiful. From the guys that made 500 a night, that made their way up to 5,000 a night, that eventually got to 25,000 a night. Now they are long gone and out of the industry, but the new crew that can come in and they can expect 40,000 a night and end up on 90,000 a night. And then their time's done. And the next crew comes in and it's six figures and you're complaining you got sponsorship. I'm just saying it's a very neat thing. And Ronda has a meaningful piece within that history. But as I observe it, all of a sudden when she leaves, we don't have anybody on Ellen's couch. The point being, even when she left, even if it wasn't for her, even if it wasn't for her pay-per-views where a participation, a financial windfall was there, she was still in a spot to do those interviews and shine up the card and pass the torch and do it for someone else. By no means would she be obligated. I'm just sharing for you that there's certain ways to go out where you can come back. You don't have to reintroduce yourself. You don't have to have somebody else talk you up and praise you and then hope that the young guys give you a hand. There's a different thing where you don't ever leave. You help, you transition. Maybe it's in a corner, maybe it's in a trainer role. And hey, look, there's nothing wrong, by the way, with ripping that Band-Aid off and saying that part of my life is now done. So there's not any part of an insult here to Ronda. I'm just observing. I'm observing what was done by Ronda. And in large part, it was you, the fan. It was us, the fighters, that came with her, helped to spread the word, and kept that fuel under the flame so that she could go into the WWE. There was never a part where Ronda, because of, and then talk about anything she had done in her past, excluding MMA, that got her there. There was never a Ronda is now in a segment on WrestleMania with The Rock because she was an Olympic bronze medalist. Just for example, it all had to do with MMA and that type of a shine, which is where it is so important that push and pull, the return to an event, keeping the name out there, I feel would help to serve somebody. And Ronda has now come out and she's talking about, first off, neurological damage. And this is a very sensitive stuff. This is very real. It wouldn't matter if you cheered for or against somebody. You're not dealing with a human being. You know, you don't ever wish something like that upon a human being. That is far outside of a sporting event of which in a confined period of time, we are trying to accumulate points. And when the time runs out, we see who has more points. We're talking about something very different. It becomes, there was a situation, it was an interview that did very well. Cat Williams was speaking with Shannon Sharp. I don't know the context of it. They were talking about Kanye West, and I don't know how they got into that context. But Cat Williams, for my interpretation for this piece that I heard, I thought was defending Kanye, where people were saying that Kanye is acting in an irrational behavior. But those same people are saying that he has some type of a mental disorder. So Cat Williams' entire stance was, if somebody has a mental handicap, why would you possibly then think it's fair game to judge and or ridicule the behaviors or decisions that they made with that mental handicap. And I mean, I'm telling you what, boy, you want to talk about a stop the music moment. So if Ronda has, and we of course would believe her that she is dealing with something neurological, as she put it, that was due to concussion, then we would stop right there with attempting to break down what it is that she said. That is where the yin and the yang comes on this, and that is why you're going to hear me talk about it. But you're going to see most people just simply staying away from it. Ronda made a comment that one of the reasons that she continued to fight. Now, she knows that she is the greatest fighter to have ever lived. But because of the concussion, she was having a hard time managing certain parts of the fight, such as distance and range. She was having a hard time getting to the opponent. The opponent was having an easier time getting to her. So there would be no way that you could accept both of those and speak about this topic any way other than matter of fact. If you believe that she was compromised neurologically, you cannot then go on to judge the statements that were being made, but it sure was a cautionary tale. It was an extremely cautionary tale because Ronda talked about the fact that she just kept fighting, but it was for the fans, that she didn't need to do it. She didn't even want to do it. She had the money, she had the accomplishments, but the fans wanted her, and this was all through something the kids used to call Twitter. I think they call it X now, but it was all through a social media platform, at that time known as Twitter. That is where she got the basis, that everyone wanted her to do this. That she was going to do it and give back because everybody needed that. Even though she wasn't one of the ones that needed it, she was doing it for them. And when it was all said and done, as she went out there with Amanda Nunes, those very fans who she did it for turned on her. They turned their backs and they betrayed her. And when I tell you it's a cautionary tale, I had a little bit of a legs up on this. I was 18 years old. I was at Brigham Young University. The kids call that BYU. Coach out there was Mark Schultz, legend himself, but brother, the icon Dave Schultz. And there was a number of interviews and clippings and things that you would see, but there was a Sports Illustrated article done by Mark Schultz, and I happened to see it. It was framed, it was up on the wall, somebody put it there, and I read it, and it just said, it's okay to read what they say about you. It's not okay to believe it. And that was it. That was the whole thing. But I would then extend that to myself. I'd really think about that quote and say, yeah, what if they're saying great things about you? You can't believe it. You start believing you're untouchable, you're invincible. That becomes a problem. You cannot believe that. You got to get in practice. You got to listen to your coaches. You got to stay hungry. You got to get better. Well, what if they're saying negative things about you? Telling you you're worthless, just for example. Well, you can't believe that. That would just pull anybody down and just be terrible. And by the way, when I saw this was in 1995, that's prior to the dot-com boom. That's prior to social media even being a phrase. It wasn't even a phrase, let alone did those kinds of things exist, where if you wanted to bully somebody or you wanted to pat somebody on the back, you could do it with 160 characters or less. So it was a very different thing. And I would always assume when the greats came into it, they were above it. They didn't feel it. They knew that those complete strangers online, right? That's where it's a cautionary tale. Like, it would hurt me as Ronda's friend, somebody that cares about Ronda, that would hurt me to know that she was hurt by strangers, that she was reading things and she put her own value and her own self-worth to the community and to the world into the comments that were made by the strangers. I would not like that for her. I would like her to know that her actual group, her real people, the outcome of a sporting event is something to celebrate for her. If she's glad that she won, then we can all be glad that she won. If she feels as though it's time to no longer compete, then we all can feel that same way. But to find out now that it wasn't like that, that those words of strangers she thought was real, she thought that was her family and or her community. And I will tell you, there are some real tough guys out there. Ones that many of you admire, still to this day, who will have their ups and downs based on the theme of their social media. And you'll hear them say, well, everybody says that. No, everybody didn't say. Not even everybody on your Twitter feed said. You read 3 to 4 that had that kind of theme, and you put it down and didn't even continue reading on. For all we know, the next 400 were the other way, but we don't actually know because you got your feelings hurt, you got them hurt early. When you got your feelings hurt and you get them hurt early, how many of those do you think the guy really sticks around and reads? I mean, in all fairness, how many of them do you think that he would stick around and read? How would he ever know what the common theme is? And moreover, why would it matter? It's always one of those tough ones. And I can always see through it, right? We know our own. We know our own. I knew everybody out there that ever used a substance that was against the rule. We all know our own. I wouldn't say anything, but I knew. And I also know my own for the people that are the hard and fast entertainers that are doing this for a business and a job. And just like anybody else, when they leave the job site for that day, it is behind them. They wash their hands, they go home to their family, and now they are husband and now they are dad. They are not bringing that job home with them. I know the difference. And Ronda was one of the first to come out and explain that she's just there to evoke an emotion. Whether it's good or bad, as long as there's an emotion, she's winning and she's doing her job. The one thing she does not want is for them to not care, for them to be neutral. So thank you for your emotion. And I knew when I read that, and that was about 9 years ago, but I knew when I read that, she's not the one that can wash her hands at the end of the day and then go home and now be dad and now be husband. I knew that. I knew there was an act and I knew that it was pretend. And you're seeing this so many times. There's nothing that's wrong with it. I label it and I'm comfortable with my words and telling you it's a cautionary tale. And you can't believe one to be true, which is concussion leading to neurological effects and defects, and then give the person a hard time. You can't do them both. But I do maintain that you can stand back and you can observe it. And a great way of just making sure that that never happens to you, a great way, if you can do it, would be the quote that I saw before all of this came along, and one that I never forget, which is, it's always okay to read, to hear, to listen what they say about you. Just make sure, good or bad, you don't ever believe it.